Welcome to Dr. Mensch, the radio show that takes a real, compassionate look at mental health from A to Z. Join child and adolescent psychiatrist Dr. Gil Lichtshein each week as we explore topics that matter: autism, ADHD, anxiety, depression, OCD, schizophrenia, behavioral challenges, neurodevelopmental disorders, and more. No stigma, no judgment. Just honest conversations, new therapies, breakthrough treatments, and real solutions for real people. Mental health is not a weakness. It's a treatable medical condition, and help is available. Join the conversation now by calling the studio at 888-994-4995, Studio A. This is Dr. Mensch, where hope and healing begin.
Good afternoon, everybody. This is Dr. Gil Lichtshein, aka Dr. Mensch. I'm a board-certified child, adolescent, adult psychiatrist in sunny, beautiful Boca Raton, Florida. Streaming here, recording here from another beautiful winter day here in Florida, where it's about 75 degrees and warm. And I'm here to talk today about nutrition and mental health. And my office is located, like I said, in Boca Raton at 7100 West Camino Real, Suite 404 in Boca Raton, Florida, 33433. And my phone number is 561-300-4052. Now, nutrition has always played a prominent role in mental health, and I would say even more so now with, I have so many patients who ask me about peptides and all these other supplements, ashwagandha, GABA, 5-HTP, and I can go on and on. And then within the last, I'm going to say, week and a half, I know that Secretary of Health and Human Services, RFK Jr., Robert F. Kennedy Jr., and the head of the FDA, Dr. Marty McCary, and I think the head of CMS, which oversees Medicare and Medicaid, Mehmet Oz, Dr. Oz, it was really Secretary Kennedy kind of, proposed and brought out his new food pyramid, which was kind of like an inverted the pyramid that came out about 35 years ago, and in this, Secretary Kennedy has been big on, make America healthy again. And again, forget about the politics and whether you like the guy, don't like the guy. I'm not here to espouse any political leaning, red, blue, conservative, liberal, Republican, Democrat. I'm here to simply talk about, the data and not even data, the information that was brought out at the news conference last week. And Secretary Kennedy was focusing on, especially with kids, focusing on fats, proteins, and grains, and kind of frowning on processed foods and processed sugars. And I know it's gotten a lot of blowback, but even before this, Secretary Kennedy was, had a mandate, or was kind of issuing his own mandate about eliminating artificial preservatives and food colorings, trying to promote this idea of health and wellness for American society. And I think overall, again, taking out of the equation about his methods or his viewpoints, but his kind of overall goals, in my opinion, I know, make a lot of sense. We've known that processed foods are not good for you, lead to a lot of health issues. This idea that fats are bad is not necessarily accurate, and that there are certain fats, especially it's called the polyunsaturated fatty acids, and more specifically the omega-3 fatty acids that are often found in foods like avocados, salmon, herring, mackerel, sardines, I personally can't stand sardines or mackerel, but I'm Jewish, so I love herring. But the fats in these types of foods are actually very beneficial, and there's data that shows that in high enough quantities, omega-3 fatty acids can elevate mood. There's some data that they can, as adjunctive treatment in schizophrenia, can help manage psychosis. So these type of fats can actually be very beneficial. And then the idea of grains and protein are also vital to whole body nutrition. Previous mandates about artificial preservatives and food colorings and additives in like cereals and other foods also make sense to try to make food cleaner, pure, more healthy. And I've traveled a lot to Europe, and I can certainly say from personal experiencing in eating in various European countries that I could tell that when I eat there, the food just tastes different, tastes fresher, cleaner. I just feel like it's healthier. And the Europeans don't have all these preservatives and food colorings. Their diet, especially in like Spain and Italy, where they have the Mediterranean diet, where they use a lot of olive oil, foods rich in unsaturated fats, have led to Europeans having lower incidence of like heart disease. That there's lower rates of obesity, and I think that European society was overall healthier. And in America, we're having this epidemic of obesity, especially in our children, which then leads to a whole slew of medical or physical and psychological, we say medical and mental health issues. And so this idea of proper nutrition is very important. It's even gotten to a point like in psychiatry, there's a number of medications that I, as well as many psychiatrists, prescribe called atypical antipsychotics. These are I call them like broad spectrum drugs. And I don't like to call them atypical antipsychotics per se, is because they're used to treat a whole variety of mental health issues: depression, anxiety, bipolar disorder, autism, OCD. And like some of these broad spectrum antibiotics, I kind of use that analogy of atypical antipsychotics are broad spectrum psychotropics. But one of the major side effects of atypical antipsychotics as a group, and this can vary from particular medicine to medicine, is it can cause an increase in appetite and weight gain. And so it's a risk factor for the development of like metabolic syndrome, high cholesterol, type 2 diabetes, and that could lead to a whole slew of medical problems and complications. And so within the last year, there's been some talk about, especially in children, adolescents, and young adults, that when using particular atypical antipsychotics that are more prone to cause weight gain, to immediately prescribe metformin in all these patients. And metformin is a medication that's been used for decades to treat type 2 diabetes, to improve or lessen or reduce insulin resistance. And one of the effects of metformin is weight loss and reduced appetite. And so this concept of, let's try to mitigate potential serious medical problems that are caused by these, medications that are very effective, that to use something like metformin to lessen any medical complications that could be caused by potential weight gain. There's, for the longest time also, patients always look at, I want to call them alternative or complementary treatments for mental health issues, and often would involve like vitamins or supplements. And there are many, supplements out there that do have beneficial effects, physiologically. Like I mentioned, fish oil. So if someone, let's say, doesn't want to eat salmon or sardines or herring or mackerel, or hates avocados, or has some anathema to olive oil, you could do fish oil supplements in capsules. And so I promote, often recommend the use of fish oil in doses about 2,000 to 3,000 milligrams a day. And actually, from a psychiatric perspective, I usually try to encourage patients to look at fish oil preparations that have a high. There's two specific omega-3 fish oils that in terms of mental health really play a role. One's called EPA, or eicosapentaenoic acid, and then DHA, or doxahexaenoic acid. And I tell patients to look at a fish oil preparation that has a higher EPA content, that it seems like that the EPA is the one that has kind of more mental health benefits. As I mentioned earlier, there's some data that shows that fish oil has antidepressant effects and can certainly help as in adjunctive treatment of psychotic disorders. So that's one example. I will encourage patients to take another supplement called S-adenosylmethionine, or SAMe, that has shown to have antidepressant effects. The big thing too, I mentioned also earlier about Secretary Kennedy, the whole thing about autism. And I'm not going to get into the debate about vaccines and autism, but one thing he mentioned about leucovorin, or folinic acid, or methylfolate, as, I don't want to say as a cure for autism, but potentially something that could help, like, slow down the course. But that aside, in today's medicine, where we have what's called pharmacogenomic testing, where it could look at patients' certain genetic makeup that could affect, potentially give us some clues as to what medications might be better suited for a particular individual based on certain genetic variations they exhibit. One of them is looking at what's called the MTHFR gene, and that's a gene that responsible for production of an enzyme called methylene tetrahydrofolate reductase, or MTHFR, which breaks down folic acid that we either take in a pill form or we get in like foods like broccoli or green, leafy vegetables, and it breaks down the folic acid to a end product called L-methylfolate. And L-methylfolate is able to cross into the brain, across what's called the blood-brain barrier, and is a very necessary and vital kind of ingredient in the production of various neurochemicals like serotonin, norepinephrine, and dopamine. And there are some patients that have a variation in this MTHFR enzyme that results in them being able to convert less folic acid to L-methylfolate. And so a way around it is by supplementing them with L-methylfolate. And there's been ample evidence that shows that L-methylfolate has antidepressant effects. And so I usually recommend all patients to supplement, or if they're interested in taking folic acid, I'll tell them, instead of taking folic acid, just go right to the source and take L-methylfolate. And there's really no real downside to it. It's a vitamin. So, and then there's ashwagandha, zinc, vitamin C, different antioxidants. I mean, it can really go on and talk about a whole slew of vitamins and supplements. It can wind up, that an individual could be taking like dozens and dozens. And there's a point to, like, do you want to overdo it on vitamins and supplements? But when done properly, benefits far outweigh the negatives. And going back to this kind of like new food pyramid that Department of Health and Human Services has promoted and encouraged is the idea of especially battling obesity in children and adolescents. And obesity, it can be viewed in many ways. In some ways, is obesity an eating disorder? One can argue. People who are obese view food differently, in some ways no differently than people with anorexia nervosa or bulimia nervosa. But obesity can also be, transmitted genetically. So again, depending on how you view it, obesity is a huge problem, and patients who are obese clearly are at risk for serious major health problems, diabetes, high cholesterol, heart disease, you name it. Obesity is a risk factor for pancreatic cancer, for example. And people with obesity also have higher rates of mental health issues. Especially in childhood, younger children who are obese often get bullied, picked on, ridiculed, ostracized. That alone can lead to, anxiety and depressive disorders. And then there's also this kind of connection between mental health and obesity. Patients with chronic mental health issues, a lot of times, are not the most responsible in taking care of themselves physically, and that could lead to serious medical problems, can lead to obesity. Then also taking into account some medications, again, I mentioned atypical antipsychotics, there are others as well that can cause weight gain. And so there is kind of this interaction or relationship, the mind-gut, connection. And it's true that the gut and the brain kind of in embryology, in the development of the human fetus, the mind or the brain and the gut or the GI system kind of they're descendants from the same they have the same ancestor. So again, another fact of trivia is the greatest amount of serotonin receptors in our body is not in the brain, it's in the gut. Curious why, because again, there's this common connection, this common ancestral connection between the brain and the gut. And that's partly a reason why SSRIs, antidepressants, one of the major side effects are nausea, stomach upset, diarrhea. Why? Because of their serotonergic effects in the gut. So there's this kind of intimate relationship between our bellies and our brains. And if we keep our brain healthy, we're more likely to keep our belly healthy. And if we keep our belly healthy, we're more likely to keep our brain healthy. And it's unfortunate that, some of the medications that we use to treat our brain often negatively impact our belly. But it's just unfortunate reality. But, it's good and fortunate that we have developed methods and techniques to kind of mitigate, any further damage that our, call them brain medications, can do to our belly. So I think that, Secretary Kennedy is kind of, going in a right path. And again, forgetting about all the political implications, just from the straight, I think he's generally wanting to look at the what's better for America as a whole. And this idea of make America healthy again really, is to kind of help, the average Joe American citizen to really think hard about what he or she puts in her mouth, and that to help us look at food differently. And again, I was in Spain last month, and I was at a restaurant in Palma de Mallorca, and I was sitting next to this German couple, and we were talking about food, and was telling them how prices at restaurants, comparing prices in Spain to say Miami, and I was also explaining to my German counterpart that the portions of the food in America is much greater than what's provided in Europe, and that and I think that kind of contributes to how America as a whole. I mean, we're in a more obese, unhealthy country. I mean, we have how many hundreds of millions of people that live here? How many of them have these chronic medical problems that could, obviously need to be treated medically, but perhaps could be treated from a nutritional standpoint. Same thing like someone with high cholesterol. You can make the argument, someone comes in with, let's say, mildly elevated LDL or triglycerides, that instead of putting him on, one of these statin drugs, like, okay, let's add some exercise and kind of change your eating habits, change how you view food, change the types of food you eat. Again, I'm not saying that we should just give up ice cream altogether, or you want to have your cake or your sweets. No, I'm not saying that, and I don't think the secretary was saying that, okay, eliminate all processed sugars, but where he put that on the food pyramid is more or less saying these are things we should minimize. Okay, obviously I think he would probably say eliminate altogether, but minimize or put less of a priority on. And I think that that's something where I believe he's trying to bring about change in American society, is to help the average citizen kind of think differently about how they eat and what they eat. And that's part of also battling obesity. It's more than just okay, you're overweight. Obesity, in terms of like the treatments, there's medication, diet, but also like a lot of behavioral aspects of obesity, changing how a person thinks about food, what food means to him or her, learning about, like say good fats, good carbs, bad carbs, things like that. No different or very similar to when someone is being treated for some type of addiction, whether it be gambling, alcohol, smoke, tobacco, drugs, sex, shopping, gaming. It's more than simply, okay, just don't drink alcohol or don't smoke weed or don't smoke cigarettes. It's also changing their behaviors, changing their viewpoints or how they perceive what alcohol is, understanding the negative consequences and impacts of alcohol. So obesity, again, I'm not going to say it's like an addiction or someone who's obese is an addict, but the treatment of it is more than simply here, take a pill or just go exercise for 3 hours a day, or take Mounjaro or eat less ice cream. It's adopting kind of a whole new lifestyle approach to food, and understanding what losing weight means to both you physically, and obviously, like I had some patients who've lost weight, and now because of it, they're off their blood pressure medicine or off their cholesterol medicine. I've had some patients able to get off some of their psychotropic medications because them losing weight has changed their self-image, has changed how they look at themselves. They're happier, they're in a better state of mind, they can accomplish things that they couldn't before. So again, proper nutrition can have an everlasting effect on both the physical state and the mental state, and is part and parcel of any treatment that a psychiatrist would do. At least I try to incorporate that in my treatment approach to patients. I want to thank you again for listening to my latest episode. Perhaps we talked a little bit off topic or something a little different, but I think that nutrition and mental health is very important. Again, this is Dr. Gil Lichtshein, aka Dr. Mensch, and I want to thank you for listening to this latest episode, and I wish everybody a good rest of your day and a great week. Thank you very much.
What happens when the mind of a healer crosses over into the darkness of the human soul? From authors David Icovetti, Dr. Gil Lichtshein, and Yolanda DeLuca comes a chilling psychological thriller, Dr. Mensch, A Prescription for Evil. This gripping novel follows a respected Boca Raton psychiatrist who secretly descends into madness, transforming into a modern-day king of the underworld. Inspired by true events and Dr. Gil's childhood connection to a mob family, this story blurs the line between sanity and evil, genius and destruction. Unforgettable, disturbing, impossible to put down. Get your copy today on Amazon.com. Dr. Mensch, A Prescription for Evil, a 2020 psychological crime thriller. Thank you for joining us for Dr. Mensch with Dr. Gil Lichtshein, helping you navigate the world of mental health with clarity and care. If you or someone you love needs support, you're not alone. Treatment works and recovery is possible. To schedule a consultation or discuss non-medication therapies, personalized treatment plans, or psychiatric care, contact Dr. Gil directly at 561-300-4052 or visit docgil.com. You can catch us each week on South Florida Oldies Radio and streaming across all social platforms. Until next time.